You gave me faith when I had nothing. Let me spend my life proving you were right." Tears spilled from Charlotte's eyes. She whispered, "Yes." The applause faded. All she felt was his hand in hers. She had once been lost, but kindness had found her. And now, she would never be alone again. The train station was nearly empty, cloaked in a heavy March mist. Cold rain drizzled onto the cracked concrete, turning the platform into a patchwork of puddles. Charlotte Brennan pulled her worn coat tighter around her frame, her fingers stiff from the cold. She was clutching a crumpled ticket and a small, dented travel mug filled with watery coffee, the only warmth she could afford that morning. The job interview she was headed to felt like the last thin thread holding her above a freefall. She'd lost her apartment, her savings, and nearly every part of the life she'd known since her mother passed away 6 months earlier. She wasn't looking for a miracle. She just needed something, anything, to stop the spiral. She glanced at the digital schedule board above her, then at the train approaching in the distance. She had just enough time to make it. Then she heard a voice, hesitant and soft. "Excuse me." She turned, startled. A man stood just a few feet away, water soaking into his thin jacket. His beard was patchy, his cheeks hollow, and his hair stuck to his forehead in wet clumps. But his eyes, blue and tired, met hers without flinching. They looked desperate but not dangerous. Sad, but not defeated. "I'm sorry," he said, shivering. "I had my wallet stolen. I just need $10 for a ticket home. I swear I'll pay you back, if you can trust me. Please." Charlotte blinked. The train whistle sounded faintly in the distance. She looked down at the single bill in her pocket. $10. It was all she had left after buying her ticket. That money was supposed to get her a sandwich after the interview, something warm to keep her grounded. $10 between her and complete emptiness. She could walk away. She should walk away. But she didn't. "Do you have anyone you can call?" she asked. He shook his head. "Phone's dead. I asked others, but nobody wanted to talk." "And how do I know you're not lying?" she pressed, uncertain. "You don't," he said simply. "But I swear, I just want to get home." There was something in his voice, raw and unpolished, that made her pause. A whisper in her mind, something left over from the version of herself that used to believe people could be good, nudged her forward. She pulled the bill out of her pocket and held it for a moment, her hand trembling. Then, with a quiet breath, she extended it. "I don't know why," she said softly, "but I believe you." He looked at the bill as though it were gold. Then he took it, gently, like it might break. "I promise I'll pay you back," he said, voice cracking. "Just get home safe," Charlotte replied. Before she could say more, the train pulled in. The man gave her a small nod, then turned and vanished into the crowd. Within seconds, he was gone. Charlotte stood still on the platform, the wind curling around her like a question. She didn't even know his name. And now, she didn't have $10. She barely had anything at all. She boarded her train, sat by the window, and watched the rain blur the world outside. That simple act, giving away her last bill, felt irrational, maybe even foolish. But something inside her stirred, quiet and unfamiliar. The following morning, she arrived late to her interview. The receptionist offered her a pitying smile and said the interviewer had already left. Charlotte offered to wait, to reschedule, but it was clear the door had closed. Dejected, she walked back into the cold. The city moved past her, fast and indifferent. When she finally reached her tiny rented room, the landlord was waiting. "Rent was due 3 days ago," he said flatly. "I know. I just need until Friday," she pleaded. "I've got someone else who can move in tomorrow." "I'm sorry, Charlotte." She didn't fight it. She had nothing left to fight with. That night, she found a quiet corner in the 24-hour library. The next night, she was told to leave. She spent the following days wandering between shelters and job centers. Her resume didn't matter when she had no address. Her voice grew quiet. Her hope shrank. Still, sometimes she thought of that man on the platform. She didn't know if she'd been conned. But remembering the way he looked at her, like she mattered, gave her the smallest flicker of something real. One rainy afternoon, as she sat on a park bench trying to warm her socks in a patch of sunlight, a group of teenagers passed. One of them threw an empty soda can her way and laughed. "Get a job." She didn't look up. That night, the library was closed for a holiday. She curled up in a bus shelter, clutching her bag to her chest, and for the first time, she cried. Silent tears soaked her collar. She missed her mother's voice. She missed belonging somewhere. The next morning, she sat on a bench near an old statue in the park, her stomach hollow, her spirit frayed. That's when she noticed her. An older woman, graceful even in her age, with a wool shawl and a brown paper bag in her hands. She stopped in front of Charlotte and said simply, "You look hungry." Charlotte murmured, "I'm fine." The woman smiled and sat beside her. She opened the bag and handed her a sandwich. "I bring extra, just in case," she said. "You'd be doing me a favor." Charlotte stared at it. "I can't." "Is your pride bigger than your hunger?" the woman asked gently. Charlotte hesitated. Then she took the sandwich. Her hands shook as she unwrapped it. One bite, and her eyes welled up. "Thank you," she whispered. The woman nodded. "There's a soup kitchen on Monroe Street. Ask for Maria. Tell her Anna sent you. They're always short on help." Later that day, Charlotte found the place, a faded brick building with a peeling sign that read New Light Kitchen. She stepped inside, met Maria, and explained why she was there. Maria didn't ask many questions. She just said, "Grab an apron." Charlotte peeled vegetables, poured soup, wiped tables. At the end of the shift, Maria handed her a small envelope with $20 inside. "Just a little thank you," she said. Charlotte almost cried again. It was enough for a few meals, or maybe a bus pass. But more than that, it was a sign she wasn't invisible anymore. She kept coming back. Not for the food, but for the people. She made friends. She learned names. She felt, finally, like she had purpose again. Weeks passed. One quiet afternoon, as she cleaned the last table, the door opened and a man stepped in. He wore a dark coat, neat shoes, combed hair. But it was his eyes, those tired, blue eyes, that made her heart stop. "You," she said. He smiled softly. "You remembered." He stepped closer. "That day at the station, you gave me everything you had." Charlotte blinked. "I never even knew your name." "Lucas," he said. "Lucas, Kentucky." He explained how he'd been running a field study for his philanthropic tech company, Kent Solutions. He'd wanted to understand poverty from the ground up, so he went undercover. "I planned everything except getting robbed on day one," he said with a grin. "You were really stranded?" "Really. And everyone turned me away. Except you." He reached into his coat and handed her a crisp $10 bill. "I've carried this with me every day. It reminded me who I want to be." She laughed softly and took the bill. "And more than that," he added, "I'd like to take you to dinner. Or at least coffee." She looked at him, the same man she'd once seen as broken. Now, here he was whole and kind. They shared coffee, then conversations, then laughter. Slowly, something warm bloomed between them. Weeks later, he invited her to tour his foundation. They offered her a role, helping shape community outreach. Charlotte hesitated. "I don't have a degree," she said. "I don't even have a home." "You have something better," Lucas replied. "You have lived it." She joined. She trained. She worked. She grew. She designed a project, a mobile kitchen that brought food and dignity to those on the street. Lucas funded it. They called it Open Hands. On the day the van rolled out for the first time, sky blue and beaming with hope, Charlotte cried. They served hundreds. They offered more than meals. They offered compassion, connection, names remembered. One day, Charlotte saw Anna again, the woman who had given her that sandwich. "I hoped you'd find your way," Anna said, smiling. "You knew Lucas?" Anna grinned. "He's my son." Charlotte stared. The world tilted. "You sent me to Maria. You knew. I knew you were the kind of person my son needed to meet." 1 year later, Charlotte was standing in front of city officials accepting an award for Open Hands. She spoke about second chances, about $10, about kindness. When she returned to the celebration that night, Lucas was waiting for her. He held out a small velvet box and a folded bill. "I kept this," he said, "not because I needed to repay it, but because it reminded me what love looks like when it's unearned." He opened the box. A simple ring,